hundreds and hundreds of people's lives.
Kevin Haig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I begin my contribution this evening by welcoming the near unanimity of this House in being determined to minimise the harm caused by this scourge, tobacco. Often in the House, we Greens have been criticising successive governments over time, and it's a great pleasure, I have to say, to be able to instead praise successive governments since 1990 for a succession of measures to reduce the harm associated with consumption of tobacco products. I want to give special praise, as others have, to Minister Turia, who has contributed a very great amount to this cause while she has been the Associate Minister. Also want to acknowledge the role of the Māori Affairs Select Committee and Tauhenare, and Hone Harawira also, who played a pivotal role in achieving that Māori Affairs Select Committee landmark report. Because that target that we have bought into as a nation of a smoke-free Aotearoa by 2025 is one that is a powerful motivator for government action. And Mr. Speaker, just in the last month or so, we had some very good news about our progress towards that goal. We heard that there had been a substantial drop in smoking rates since 2006 to the current census. So overall, we have a smoking rate that's now well on track to a much lower level. But it's still not fast enough to achieve that goal of a smoke-free Aotearoa by 2025. And what's more, while the overall figure looks great, there are still very substantial inequalities. So the prevalence rates amongst Māori, amongst Pacifica people, are still much higher, and rates in those communities are nowhere near on track reaching that smoke-free goal by 2025. And what that says, Mr. Speaker, is we absolutely still need that comprehensive strategy, and we need more urgent action than that we have implemented to date if we are to achieve our collective goal. And that's an approach, that comprehensive strategy is an approach of regulating this product proportional to its amount of harm. And tobacco remains the single greatest cause of preventable death in this country. The amount of harm it causes is astonishingly high. A number of speakers have referred to the 5,000 deaths each year from tobacco. What that translates to, Mr. Speaker, is 13 preventable deaths every single day from this product. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, and I believe most members of this House believe, that that kind of death toll, that enormous harm caused to our country and to our population is reason enough for urgent and dramatic action. Other speakers have put this particular measure into that broader context, and I won't dwell on that. But what I do want to point out is something that I think is important to this debate, and that is around the fundamental role of government. What is there, in fact, more fundamental to the role of a government than to prevent death of its citizens? Nothing, I hear it said, and I agree with that member, Shane Ardern. This cuts to the very heart of what a government or a state is about. It is deeply disturbing, therefore, that government is proposing to delay implementation of this bill until such time as the various court cases and actions against the Australian government are settled. And others have mentioned this. Ian Lees-Galloway spoke about the commencement process of order in council or of a period up to 18 months. And Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that that is acceptable. In the face of the size of this problem and the role that this measure can play in solving that problem, I don't believe that that kind of delay can possibly be acceptable. The tobacco companies, Mr. Speaker, are scared of this bill. They're scared of this measure. And indeed, it falls into a pattern that has existed for every one of the tobacco control measures that has been implemented in every country, every time. Tobacco companies have fought them tooth and nail. And the ferocity of their fighting has been proportional to the likely effectiveness of the measure being considered. Their sole motivation, Mr. Speaker, is profit maximisation. That is not a goal that our state, our parliament, ought to share. Members will recall the vigorous and expensive advertising campaign that the tobacco companies unleashed upon our nation. And I would put it to this House and to the nation that is evidence that the tobacco companies are aware of how effective this measure will be. It will be effective at stopping new people taking up smoking. It will be effective at undermining the reinforcement of smoking behaviour of current smokers. And it will be effective at assisting those who have quit to stay quit, all of which the tobacco companies resist and oppose, and all of which this Parliament should be supporting with its whole heart and whole effort. So government's caution in implementing is inconsistent with that need for dramatic action. What we need instead is a clear, urgent timetable to enact this legislation. I signal thanks to the United States Chamber of Commerce and its fellow traveller organisations for pointing out just so clearly their intention that those international agreements ought to undermine this country's sovereignty with their threats to this country over the last couple of days. I agree with Dr. Paul Hutchison when he said, every nation has the sovereign right to protect the health of its people. I agree with that. And the Greens say that if that sovereign right is threatened, then there is all the more reason for the government to stand up and protect that sovereign right. Delaying implementation is caving to the threats, extortion and delaying tactics of an evil industry. 13 deaths every day, Mr. Speaker. That demands urgent action. It demands the exercise of that core government sovereignty, and it demands that this bill is brought into law as soon as it possibly can be.
Honourable John Banks.
I rise to